Although remote work became pretty popular over the past year, some employers are still learning how to navigate it efficiently. And to throw salt in the wound, now some employees are going back into the office, creating what we call a hybrid workforce. This means that you do have some employees that are remote and that are in the office. Now, with this hybrid workforce, it does have many benefits for employers as well as employees. However, it does come with a few challenges that you'll need to navigate. I'm Skye Schooley, a staff writer with business.com, and to gain insight on this topic, I'm joined by Carla Yudhishthu. She is the VP of People and Talent at Mineral. So Carla, thank you so much for joining me today. As you're well aware, today we're talking about recruiting and retaining hybrid workforces. So to get us started as a jumping off point, what are some of the biggest benefits of having a hybrid workforce?
For starters, I would just say it's become in companies that have the flexibility, right, to employ hybrid workforce. I think it's a ticket to entry at this point. It's what I'm seeing from a talent perspective. So just to be competitive and be able to continue attracting talent, I think it's like, that's the bar. It's like the starting point with talent right now. So from a benefits perspective, just first is access to talent, because if we don't do it, or if, companies that are able to, and I realize not all small businesses can work that way, but those that have proven that they can, I think it's like a requirement going forward, because people, it's become an expectation. I also think that, one of the huge benefits is just the access to talent, right? Our company primarily had been based in, I would say, 3 areas: Milwaukee, Portland, and Pleasanton. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There is Milwaukee, Oregon. Don't want to confuse that, but Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Portland, Oregon, and Pleasanton, California. And we had, a small percentage of our employees were remote prior to the pandemic, and we've moved to just over 50% remote at this point. It's expanded, where we can recruit talent, how we can recruit talent, letting us get into talent pools that we hadn't had access to before because we weren't thinking that way.
And I guess kind of on the flip side, what are some of the challenges that businesses are facing with recruiting and retaining a hybrid workforce?
So certainly, I think that particularly small businesses will continue to run into challenges with not having done business and employed folks in other states, right? So there's state regs to think about, their payroll requirements, vacation and time off requirements, the number of different compliance type, HR compliance needs that have to be considered when you're looking at employing folks in different states. Another thing that has become really obvious to us is, so we just ran, are you familiar with the Gallup engagement survey? So they're kind of like best in class for, employee engagement assessment. And we're partnering with Gallup and just ran our first Gallup engagement survey. And there are 12 questions. It's a pretty scientific survey for engagement, but, tried and true by Gallup. And one of the questions is, I have a best friend at work. And there's some science behind that question relative to, having a good connection point, having that person at work, having, sort of your anchor at work. And that score was lower for us. We fared pretty well across the board from an engagement perspective. That question, we scored consistently low. And, I asked Gallup, is that a trend you're seeing with this hybrid and remote, situation that we're in a lot of companies? And they've seen some drop in it, but I think for us, there's a lot that we're continuing to figure out around engaging talent and helping build those connection points, collaboration points, friends, finding your friend at work, finding your person at work when it's all done virtually for the most part.
And so I guess some of those challenges that you had mentioned, HR compliance, lower engagement, and the such, what type of actionable steps can employers take to solve for these challenges?
There's a lot we're still figuring out, so a lot of deep breaths, I would say, for starters, for everyone, I think is probably a top recommendation, because it's not all going to get solved overnight. There's been a lot of test and learn. I've been using those words and, trying to be fair about those words because we're not guinea pigs at work. But there is a lot of like, let's try this. Does it work? Let's see what feedback we get. Let's see how this lands with our team members. We pulse survey every couple weeks, sort of, just kind of from an employee net promoter score and kind of a engagement, day to day, week to week. We pulse survey every 2 weeks, and we also ask for very direct feedback in that process. So checkpoints are really good on, is what you're doing working? We have put in place over the last 18 months, and it continues to evolve, but we've put in place we call them Ask Me Anything sessions with our executive leadership team. They're like 30-minute Slack Q&A sessions where, the ELT is all on task to answer questions, and sort of they just come rapid fire for 30 minutes. And it could be about comp and ben, it could be about business strategy, it could be about product plans, it could be about customer challenges, it could be about, whatever. We're just there, and we try to do our best to kind of answer rapid fire. We built Q&A time into all of our all hands meetings. We have built like a whole bunch of just leadership meetings and senior leadership meetings and just forums to make sure that we're bringing folks together. We're keeping the informs in place, and also plenty of time for both questions, answers, and recognition. I think that's another thing that can get lost. You don't have the same experience of, in a team meeting. You come out of a team and you have a chance to go over to someone's desk and thank them personally for what they did or how they contributed to the success of something. So getting innovative around, recognition, and there's reward too, right? And the reward piece, the comp and ben piece that we're constantly assessing and trying to keep up with, because that's changing. But I think the recognition piece, it doesn't take much to recognize people, but when you don't have all that face-to-face interaction, you need to think differently about how you're going to do it, where, when, how.
Awesome. And I guess to kind of build on that, what can employers do to build and maintain a strong company culture when they do have a hybrid workforce?
So we have done a number of things, and I'd say there's still more test and learn in this, but about almost 1 year ago, it was last fall, September, October, we launched some health and wellness classes for all of our employees, all of our team members, and they range from using essential oils to yoga, meditation. The meditation has been a big hit. Healthy cooking, cocktail making, and we've tried to appeal to different, interests. We also survey on that to say, are these classes worth your while? Is there interest? We're kind of monitoring what kind of uptake do we get, and when we see more interest, we lean in another direction. We offered Headspace to all of our employees. We continue to do that. A good example of something that I think has been a learning for us through the pandemic is we had these sessions called Common Grounds, where Nathan Christensen, our CEO, would have often been traveling, right, pre-pandemic, and he would have been, a couple weeks a month down in the California office, and a couple months here, sometimes in Milwaukee, where we had some folks, and he would hold what was called Common Ground sessions, and it's a Common Grounds, so that he would take a bunch of people out for coffee. 10 or 12 people could sign up. It was totally voluntary, but it was like, go have coffee with the CEO and ask him anything. And right after the pandemic, we moved those to virtual, and we were having no interest in it. So we paused those. We just said, we're going to pause the Common Grounds right now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in doing that virtually. We let it go for probably 6 months. And we revisited it several months later, and the interest has been overwhelming. So, that time away, sort of, maybe, something about the, fondness, making the heart grow fonder, having that time away, I think sort of happened where people were like, oh, and we had a number of new people. We've recruited a lot of new folks, and a number of folks who had never been here and met Nathan in person or met any of us in person. So we've reinstituted those every month. We have a common grounds, and they're a little bit bigger because it's not just Nathan taking people out to coffee. We can have more folks in a virtual session, but we still try to keep it small so that it's pretty intimate and everyone has a chance to speak, and it's super interactive. We can all see each other on one screen, and kind of make it a more intimate virtual experience. So we're continuing, I would just say, to innovate and listen to our employees. One of the other things I would say that's really important when it comes to the culture is just onboarding, right? Tailoring your onboarding. We had to really rethink how we were doing onboarding for a virtual world and helping bring our culture alive. So finding a time and place in the onboarding to talk about our values, because people might not experience them and understand them the same when they're not here day to day. And we want a lot of our decision making to be values-based, our communication to be values-based. And so keeping those things front and center. And so our onboarding has been revamped quite a bit. And we've had a couple of different touch points through the last 18 months where, we changed everything, in the beginning of the pandemic, and we changed it again a few months ago because we're continuing to evolve.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all that valuable insight. Before we wrap this up, did you have any final advice for recruiting and retaining a hybrid workforce specifically?
So again, I think understanding talent based in regions where you haven't been, perhaps working with a recruiter in those regions if you're able to access like a third-party recruiter that can help, a contract recruiter from that region, or search firms if they're higher level positions where you could afford to pay a search fee. I think that's one thing that can help with accessing talent and in regions where we haven't lived or existed or spent a lot of time recruiting. Having solid job descriptions, that's something that we've spent a lot of time on, or like last fall going into the new year, realizing again, with everyone being sort of in different places, very disparate, geographically disparate workforce, role clarity becomes really important. Job descriptions become really important. Making sure that the job descriptions have a competency framework so that we have clarity about what we're recruiting for, what it really takes to do this job versus just the experience. The competencies can make that a little crisper. And it also helps interviewers, like when it comes to recruiting, and it really helps if you're clear in recruiting, you're going to do better in retention, right? Because you're clear with your candidates about what you're looking for, what we need, what it takes. We better understand what candidates have to offer. And then obviously if there's a better meeting of the minds in the recruiting process, you're gonna increase your retention chances. So there's a lot of just getting used to doing this in a way that used to be, come sit down, let me get you coffee, in an interview process, right? It's just a little, you lose some of that like personal touch. And so finding ways to make the process kind of still yield what you need out of it. So,
well, that was all very insightful. And I think that was all that we had time for today. Carla, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. If you have any follow-up questions, just let me know.